The hemispheres for the first plutonium pit, or core, were produced and delivered on the 2nd of July, 1945. 3 more hemispheres followed on the 23rd of July and were delivered 3 days later. 216. In contrast to the plutonium Fat Man, the uranium gun-type Little Boy weapon was straightforward if not trivial to design. Overall responsibility for it was assigned to Parsons's Ordnance Division, with the design development and technical work at Los Alamos consolidated under Lieutenant Commander Francis Birch's group. The gun-type design now had to work with enriched uranium only, and this allowed the design to be greatly simplified. A high-velocity gun was no longer required, and a simpler weapon was substituted. 217, 218, Trinity. Because of the complexity of an implosion-style weapon, it was decided that, despite the waste of fissile material, a full-scale nuclear test would be required. Oppenheimer codenamed in Trinity. 219, in March 1944, planning for the test was assigned to Kenneth Bainbridge, who selected the bombing range near Alamogordo Army Airfield for the test site. 220, a base camp was constructed with barracks, warehouses, workshops, an explosive magazine and a commissary. 221, a pre-test explosion was conducted on the 7th of May 1945 to calibrate the instruments. A wooden test platform was erected 800 yards, 730 m, from ground zero and piled with 100 short tons, 91 t, of TNT spiked with nuclear fission products. 222, 223, men stand around a large oil rig type structure. A large round object is being hoisted up. The explosives of the gadget were erased to the top of the tower for final assembly. Groves did not relish the prospect of explaining to a Senate committee the loss of $1 billion worth of plutonium, so a cylindrical containment vessel codenamed Jumbo was constructed to recover active material in the event of a failure. It was fabricated at great expense from 214 short tons, 194 t, of iron and steel. 224. By the time it arrived, however, confidence in the implosion method was high enough, and the availability of plutonium was sufficient, that Oppenheimer decided not to use it. Instead, it was placed atop a steel tower 800 yards, 730 m, from the weapon as a rough measure of how powerful the explosion would be. Jumbo survived, although its tower did not, adding credence to the belief that Jumbo would have successfully contained a fizzled explosion. 225, 222. The Trinity test of the Manhattan Project was the first detonation of a nuclear weapon. For the actual test, the weapon nicknamed the Gadget was hoisted to the top of a 100-foot, 30 m, steel tower. As detonation at Lafayette would give a better indication of how the weapon would behave when dropped from a bomber. Detonation in the air maximized its energy applied directly to the target and generated less nuclear fallout. The Gadget was assembled under the supervision of Norris Bradbury at the nearby McDonald Ranch House on the 13th of July, and precariously winched up the tower the following day. 226. At 5:30 on the 16th of July, 1945, the Gadget exploded with an energy equivalent of around 20 kilotons of TNT, leaving a crater of trinitite, radioactive glass, in the desert 250 feet, 76 m, wide. The shock wave was felt over 100 miles, 160 kilometers, away, and the mushroom cloud reached 7.5 miles, 12.1 kilometers, in height. It was sheared as far away as El Paso, Texas, so Groves issued a cover story about an ammunition magazine explosion at Alamogordo Field involving gas shells. 227, 228. Oppenheimer later recalled that, While witnessing the explosion, he thought of a verse from the Hindu holy book, the Bhagavad Gita 11:12. If the radiance of 1,000 suns were to burst at once into the sky, that would be like the splendor of the mighty one. 229, 230, together with verse 11:32, which he translated, now I am become death, the shatterer of worlds. 231, 232, personnel. At its peak in June 1944, the Manhattan Project employed about 129,000 workers, of whom 84,500 were construction workers, 40,500 were plant operators and 1,800 were military personnel. As construction activity declined, the workforce fell to 100,000 a year later, but the number of military personnel increased to 5,600. Procuring the required numbers of workers, especially highly skilled workers, in competition with other vital wartime programs proved very difficult. 233. Due to high turnover, over 500,000 people worked on the project. 234. In 1943, Groves obtained a special temporary priority for labor from the War Manpower Commission. In March 1944, both the War Production Board and the War Manpower Commission gave the project their highest priority. 235. The Kansas Commission director stated that from April to July 1944 every qualified applicant in the state who visited a United States Employment Service office was urged to work at the Hanford site. No other job was offered until the applicant definitively rejected the offer. 236. A large crowd of men and women in uniform listens to a fat man in uniform speaking at a microphone. They are wearing the Army Service Forces sleeve patch. The women are at the front and the men at the back. Beside him is the flag of the Army Corps of Engineers. Behind them are wooden two-story buildings. Major General Leslie R. Groves, Jr. speaks to service personnel Oak Ridge, Tennessee in August 1945. Tolman and Conant, in their role as the project's scientific advisors, drew up a list of candidate scientists and had them rated by scientists already working on the project. Groves then sent a personal letter to the head of their university or company asking for them to be released for essential war work. 237. One source of skilled personnel was the Army itself, particularly the Army Specialized Training Program. In 1943, the Med created the Special Engineer Detachment, SED, with an authorized strength of 675 technicians and skilled workers drafted into the Army brass elite to the SED. Another source was the Women's Army Corps, WAC. Initially intended for clerical tasks handling classified material, the WACs were soon tapped for technical and scientific tasks as well. 238. On the 1st of February 1945, all military personnel assigned to the MED, including all SED detachments, were assigned to the 9812th Technical Service Unit, except at Los Alamos, where military personnel other than SED, including the WX and military police, were assigned to the 4817th Service Command Unit. 239. An associate professor of radiology at the University of Rochester School of Medicine, Stafford L. Warren, was commissioned as a colonel in the United States Army Medical Corps, and appointed as chief of Field's Medical Section and Groves' medical advisor. Warren's initial task was to staff hospitals at Oak Ridge, Richland and Los Alamos. 240. The medical section was responsible for medical research, but also for Field's health and safety programs. This presented an enormous challenge, because workers were handling a variety of toxic chemicals, using hazardous liquids and gases under high pressures, working with high voltages, and performing experiments involving explosives, not to mention the largely unknown dangers presented by radioactivity and handling fissile materials. 241. Yet in December 1945, the National Safety Council presented the Manhattan Project with the Award of Honor for Distinguished Service to Safety in recognition of its safety record. Between January 1943 and June 1945, there were 62 fatalities and 3,879 disabling injuries, about 62% below the rate of private industry. 242. Secrecy. Uncle Sam has removed his hat and is rolling up his sleeves. On the wall in front of him are 3 monkeys and the slogan, "What you see here / what you do here / what you hear here / when you leave here / let it stay here." A billboard encouraging secrecy among Oak Ridge workers. Byron Price, head of the Office of Censorship, called the Manhattan Project the best-kept secret of the war. 243. In 1945, Life estimated that before the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, probably no more than a few dozen men in the entire country knew the full meaning of the Manhattan Project, and perhaps only 1,000 others even were aware that work on atoms was involved. The magazine wrote that the more than 100,000 others employed with the project worked like moles in the dark. Warned that disclosing the project's secrets was punishable by 10 years in prison or a fine of $10,000, equivalent to $163,000 in 2022. They monitored dials and switches while behind big concrete walls mysterious reactions took place without knowing the purpose of their jobs. 244, 245. 246. In December 1945, the U.S. Army published a secret report assessing the security apparatus surrounding the Manhattan Project. The report states that the project was more drastically guarded than any other highly secret war development. The surrounding security infrastructure was so vast and thorough that in the early days of the project in 1943, investigators vetted 400,000 potential employees.
Yes, I need to stop again because we have the late Danish evening news and we have a very bad storm outside. The video splits in 1 minute. So I will get some cola, then I will charge the camcorder, then I will read it, finish, and start upload. Drink this cola is very good, but the video splits in 1 minute. Yes, cheers. Yes, we have to stop the video. I will charge the camcorder, then read it, finish.